On today's Memorial Day weekend matinee, we got a lot to talk about, including is the NFL media starting to turn on Mike McDaniel? Are the funny antics and the honeymoon over? Plus, I've been saying we hadn't heard it, but did we finally hear it regarding Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins extension talks? What that is, we will talk about that. We got plenty to go over, plenty to discuss as OTAs continue this week. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new. Let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, that open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. It's going to open a touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go! What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one. Happy Memorial Day weekend to all my friends down in the United States. Appreciate all you. And shout out to all you who have already showed up in the chat. From Pro Special to Robert Thomason, Andrew Harris, Woodson, PL, Diehard Fins fan, Scorpion King, Brian Fawcett, Knight, Lemony Crawdad, Chuck, Paulie King 305, Garn 79, Cokemaster D, Maurice Brown, Corey Walker, Paulie King 305, Jason Stamps. Appreciate all of you. Jason Keck coming through too. Appreciate all of you coming through on this midday on a Sunday. Lager Hop. Shout out to he's obviously a beer fan. Shout out to you, sir. Shout out to I'm gonna guess that's an ISIS D. Shout out to you. Maurice Brown, what up, Chad? Says the Dolphins must win the division. 110%. Listen, last year, I was the first one out ahead during the season. What did I say? They got to win this division. You could already see halfway through the season, you could, a quarter of the way through the season, I was saying that. You could already see what this team was turning into in terms of much better at home, and you had much more faith in this offense and how it operated at home rather than on the road. But here's the thing, you're going to have to change that. You know, sooner or later, you're going to have to change that. You know, you're going to have to beat the stigma of a team that can, and we'll talk about this in a bit here. You're going to have to beat the stigma of a team that don't like the cold. And now, listen, I don't agree with that. I think just things haven't gone our way. I mean, look, perfect example. I always go back to this game. 2022 in Buffalo. When everyone told us Tua can't throw in the cold, Tua can't throw in the snow, he was arguably the best player, but other factors in the game let us down and stopped us from winning that game. Right? That was a game we should be able to hang our hat on if Josh Boyer did his job, if Tyreek Hill did his job, if Trent Sherfield did his job. And I'll tell you this much, 2-5 looks a lot better than 1-6. You know, it's funny. People will say, you know, the Dolphins can't beat good teams, but they seem to forget that, you know, that year we beat the Buffalo Bills at home, had a chance to Tua played well enough where we should have swept them. And it just didn't happen. But I agree with you. We need to win our division. The excuses are starting to run thin because here's where we're at right now. The Buffalo Bills keep getting thinner and thinner roster-wise. That's what the fact of the matter is. You look at that team, they're worse than last year. You look at that team last year, they're worse than the year before. Now, the way this is going, they might have an even bigger than a 3-game lead heading into the last month of this season, looking at how that team looks right now. The Bills I'm talking of course. Anything's possible. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Look around. Has anyone in the AFC East strengthened themselves further the way we have? And I agree with Logger Hop. Balanced approach will rewrite the last 6 games narrative. I agree. And you know why? Because I've said this since I started this channel. You have to be able to run the football in December, January in the playoffs. You cannot win a Super Bowl without running the football. I mean, do we have to go back to when the Chiefs beat the 49ers? Who would have thought Damian Williams, former Dolphin, would be the one that they hung their hat on, but they ran the ball. And it brought them back kept them around all game, and then they came back when Garoppolo missed that bomb. That would have sealed it. When Garoppolo missed that, they came back. But balanced approach. I agree with you 110%. 110%. I agree with that. And this, I wanted Jonathan Taylor last offseason. This team wanted Jonathan Taylor last offseason. And it wasn't a knock on Raheem Mostert so much as we want someone who's going to be there down the stretch. And what happened last year? Mostert wasn't fully healthy down the stretch. Achane dealing with his first ever injury. He didn't even have an injury in college. He went on record and talking about this is the first major injury he'd ever dealt with in his career. Learning his body. And now that seems why they've doubled up on Jalen Wright. Right? They want assurances. You can tell. This team knows. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know you got to be able to run the football. That's just how it works, man. And if you can't run the football, especially in the playoffs, it's not going to be super pretty. So, I mean, that just is what it is. So, I agree. A balanced approach, 110%, can change things very easily. Knight, member of 23 months. Any word on Chop or Brewers injuries? Is this regarding them? Are you talking about them playing on the sideline? Practicing on the sideline? Is that what you're referring to? I haven't personally heard anything regarding. I don't even want to say their injury. I don't know what they have. I haven't heard anything. So, in regards to their injuries, are you just referring to them playing on the sidelines? So I've not heard anything regarding. I just heard that he was working out on the sideline. So I haven't really seen or heard anything regarding either one, to be honest with you. I mean, Cam Smith was on the sideline too, right? I'm pretty sure if you go back, Cam Smith, Aaron Brewer, and Chop Robinson were on the sideline. If I remember correctly. From the OTA reports. That was just the OTA reports. Yeah, they could be nursing. Probably. I don't think it's anything serious. If they weren't on the sideline, then I would be worried. I mean, it could be as simple as I've got a little tightness. Okay, workout on the sideline. Right? Because I do remember, and Dolphin Tina pointed out here, I remember in Omar Kelly's report, Chop was wearing a sleeve on his leg, right? So, I mean, it's OTAs right now. I mean, look at how many veterans they held out. They don't want the media knowing anything, so we're not going to hear anything regarding that. That's the reality of the situation. Michelle says Dolphins need to stay healthy and will surprise everyone. They are ready for the season. I mean, the first part you can't go without saying that enough. This is going to be survival of the fittest, literally the definition of it, especially when it comes to that offensive line. Like, the reality of the fact is here, we need Terron Armstead and Isaiah Wynn for as long as possible. We need them to probably have their healthiest seasons as pros. Now, are we asking a lot? Potentially. I think this is why you got a lot of fans who they want more done in regards of depth. Because that's the problem. We're all sitting here. You've added depth at receiver. You've added depth at tight end. You've added depth at running back. Right? You didn't add a lot of depth at, Jack Driscoll's your attempt at adding depth? So it seems like they've reinforced every area except arguably the most key. And what stresses me out about it is they know how big of an Achilles it can be in that building if they're scheming to have the ball out in under 2.5 seconds. What does that tell me? That tells me you do not trust your offensive line. Now, Patrick Paul, I can't even sit here and label as a reinforcement because he's not starting at guard year one. And if something does have to happen to Armstead, there's a good chance Kendall Lamb's the one that they bring in there because of trusting him. So, even the guys you want to label as reinforcements, you can't label. Holly D. Barry says, hey, Reason, how's it going? You know anything about Vancouver? Heading to the big CA after the Seattle game. Let's go. Your first away game. Okay. I've never personally been to Vancouver. The wife's been to Vancouver. I can tell you this much. If you're a ganja fan, you're gonna like you're gonna like Vancouver. It's nice. Vancouver. The West is warmer climates than on the east side of Canada, obviously, right? It's more rain there than it is snow. From what I know, it gets real nice. Now, there's islands and Vancouver Island and such. So there's actual islands you can go out and visit out there too. So, yeah, I've never been, but that's all I really know about it. Night, and they're the reason why our housing market spiked. Night, I'm not really worried necessarily, just more of a wonder. Could be preventative measure, could be just want to work specific things. Thanks. Yeah, we're not going to get any answers, right? And they're going to be even tight-lipped. Like, I've said this before. It was so much easier to get information out of the Miami Dolphins when Brian Flores was, which is hilarious because he brought help over from New England to try and shut all that down. It's way harder to get information out, and I could imagine no one's even telling the reporters on the sideline, I'm sure they inquired, but I'm sure no one's being told. You know what I mean? Now, again, if they weren't out there, you know what I mean? If they were completely absent, then that would be reason for concern. Again, it could be something as simple as I've got tightness in my calf. I've got tightness, wherever, right? Michelle says, do you think they are done adding depth? June 1st is coming. No, I do not think they're adding depth, but I do not think they're going to add the people everyone wants. I don't think they're going to add Dalton Risner. I don't think they will. I'd be more for a Greg Van Routen. That's where I'd be. You know what I mean? Because he can play right guard. The right guard is, but you need depth at left guard too. Like, listen, I was not a fan of Robert Jones last year. I thought he looked like he regressed a little bit. I think what's scary is some of that money might be spent on defensive depth, not even offensive line depth. I mean, perfect example. Greg Van Routen's out there. Reisner's out there. Andres Pete was out there at the time. He's now been signed. All these guys are still out there, and they brought in Phil Haynes. That's who they brought in to the building. So that's why I'm sitting here saying I don't think it's going to be, someone everyone's going to be doing backflips over. There were a lot better options. I mean, Mark Lewinsky was out. I don't know if he's still out there, but he was out there at the time too. And they decided to bring in Haynes. Is Mark Lewinsky still out there? Let me see. Mark Lewinsky. Yeah, he's a free agent. So Mark Lewinsky was even out there. And they said, yeah, let's bring in Phil Haynes. Let's see what he's got. I don't know. I don't think you guys, I don't think they're going to add. Here's what I think. They saw how good the offensive line was when these guys were healthy. How good it was when Isaiah Wynn and Terron Armstead healthy. I mean, we all saw how much more effective Achane was and Mostert were when Connor Williams and Wynn and Armstead were out there. So I think they're sitting there saying, well, if we can get a healthy season out of Isaiah Wynn, and I don't think they think there's going to be much of a drop-off between Aaron Brewer and Connor Williams. Now, I know there's people out there, well, maybe they're waiting to spend money on Connor Williams when in case he gets healthy. There's not even a certainty Connor Williams is going to play again this year. But look at the names they brought in compared to look at the names who were out there at the time they brought them in. Again, go look at who was still on the market when they brought in Haynes. That kind of tells you where they're at. Might not like it, but I'll say it. I don't think they want to bring anyone that threatens Wynn or Eichenberg. People want to talk about them not wanting to bring competition on for Tua. The way I'm seeing this, they don't want to bring in legit competition for Wynn or Eichenberg. Realistically, how much help can we get from Phillips and Chubb in 2024 after coming off a serious injury? Hey, you remember what happened. You remember what Cam Wake looked like when he came back off that Achilles injury. So I can't sit here and tell you and write them off for you if that's what you're expecting. I also can't sit here and say, oh my God, 13, 14 sacks. What I can say is there's cases where players don't look the same, and then there's cases like Cam Wake. So we all remember how Cam Wake looked coming off that Achilles, right? He had one of his best seasons ever. So anything is possible. Anything is possible. I just thank God we only have to play on that MetLife field once. Any word on Justin Simmons? No, sir. What's funny, too, is we're not that far away, huh? Next Saturday is when that money comes free for the Miami Dolphins. Not really. I don't see them rolling over all that money. I don't. They're going to do something. What would be interesting to me is if they trade for a contract. I hate to be this way, but I'm just not an Eichenberg fan and don't get what the Finns seeing him. Watching him try to block is like watching a remote control car get sink in quicksand. I mean, in all fairness, his best reps were at right guard last year. What you're getting into is this. This is what you're getting into. This is where you get into ego and arrogance from coaching. We see it all the time. Flores and those guys thought they could make monogamy work. Now, albeit Eichenberg has shown more at a professional level. Well, I mean, Eichenberg did have an interception. But Eichenberg's at least giving you more starting reps. Now, whether that's been forced by injury or not, that's a different discussion. But in terms of playing time, Eichenberg's giving you more than Igbinoghene ever did. But this is what happens when you get gurus in certain positions, right? Like, they believe they can make Eichenberg work. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, whether they re-sign him and re-up him is a totally different animal, but they believe they can make him work for now. Buddy, that story started on this channel. I don't know. Welcome to the show, Dean. That Miami and Washington all started on this channel. Go look at my Thursday show from about, 3 weeks ago? And then if you're a Patreon or channel member, go look at the Patreon and the YouTube community tab for channel members. Miami, Washington, the trade talk, we broke that story on this channel. No, I think the ship sailed. Unless he said, hey, I'm willing to come back for like a vet minimum, I think that ship has kind of sailed. So I think it's over for him. And the guy who's got to be, I'll tell you right now, channel members and Patrons, they know this because they got the whole deal from me. The guy who's got to be on his P's and Q's this year is Kader Kohu. We don't know what the deal was. We don't know who the players were that they were discussed. So I had suggested, I theorized Jonathan Allen because he's on the trade block. We did not hear what names were involved. I don't think there's a trade happening. I think something would have already happened. But anyways, yeah, happy Memorial Day to all of you. So let's get into this. Let's start this off. Now, to avoid copyright, I am going to play this clip, but I'm going to have a screenshot from the show. This is from First Things First. And is the media starting to turn on Mike McDaniel? I got two little instances over the last week. This one's interesting because of what they talk about. The other one's interesting because of who is talking and what they say. All right, so let's get into this. So this is from First Things First.
Different. So those boys don't want that cold.
Hold on. So
and the boys in the cold don't want to go down to that heat.
All right. So can I say something that I think you guys are gonna scoff at, but I believe is true? In that playoff game in Kansas City. Now that was the third coldest game ever. So now we're talking extremes.
Those are right.
On one sideline, you have Andy Reid with damn stalactites hanging from his mustache.
Disgusting.
And just coaching. And Mike McDaniel, from the moment they first showed him, looked miserable. I think Mike has done everything to try to pump up Tua smartly. I also think he's a brilliant coach. I think that dealing with the cold starts with him. I think
what do you want him to do? Wear a short sleeve shirt? It's too cold.
Yes. No, well, that was too cold. No, that you couldn't have. You could lose an arm. But if it's November 3rd, they play Buffalo. According to my friends at the Farmer's Almanac, it's supposed to be 44 degrees that day. That's under that. I want him in joggers and a short sleeve shirt and
he
just
does like those joggers.
Nothing's going on.
Yeah.
I think there is an element. Greg, you're rolling your eyes. I do think there is an element. In one of the most famous games in NFL history, we had an old man's face almost break apart in Tom Coughlin, turning purple. And those Giants dealt with it, and their coach was dealing with it. I think it's.
And you're saying we didn't deal with it, and Mike McCarthy didn't deal with it.
Huh? I mean, we just lost. I'm just telling. What I'm telling you is, I'm not saying you guys didn't deal with it. What I am saying is, I do think there is a sense of, from your coach and your quarterback, are we going to let the elements be a part of this story?
Yep.
And Mahomes clearly was like, no, we're not. And I'm saying I think Tua might need an assist in that, and I think the assist could come from Mike McDaniel.
I think you're on to something as it pertains to the quarterback. Not a single player gets dressed and looks at the coach. Let me see what coach got on.
So this is where we're at right now. We're in May, and we got literally. Now listen, if you want to sit here and say Mike McDaniel didn't game plan well enough for the cold, I will agree with that because I've discussed it. Right? I've discussed this. I've said his game plan for that game was not good. Okay? You've got a touch thrower in Tua Tagovailoa, all right? A finesse thrower, not a rocket arm, and you're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage and horizontally in minus 29 weather and 27 mile per hour winds and gusts. Even guys with rocket arms, that's not a great deal. That's why I've always talked about this. If you go back to that game, watch when Tua was throwing outside the numbers or throwing downfield. He was making the throws because it was easier for him to throw against the wind in that than it was. The wind is going to, listen, a ball fired out going vertically or upfield is going to have a lot better of a chance getting through that wind than throwing either behind you or horizontally directly from you. The wind is going to catch that ball and it's going to flutter. That's why you saw them having problems with the screen game. Now, but we're in May. And we are now, you've got a Chiefs fan up there who watched the game, and Nick Wright, blaming Mike McDaniel, basically blaming Mike McDaniel for not being warm enough. That's basically where we're at. Oh, he looked uncomfortable. He didn't look happy. What do you expect? Would you look happy out there in minus 29 weather? Like that's where we're getting to now. And see, this is what makes me wonder is the media, because, you know, now they're starting to make a big deal about the little things. We're not talking about the game plan. He's not even sitting here. He didn't even talk about him having the team prepared for that weather. The most they talked about was Tua. It was basically, oh, you got to look like you're comfortable in that weather because look at Andy Reid. He's got icicles coming off his mustache, so he looks unfazed, unbothered. That's where we're at right now. Is the honeymoon over? Are the funny antics and the joking around, has that worn thin now with the NFL media? Is that where we're going? Because you didn't even sit there and give the record in cold weather. You literally stuck to, oh, he's got to look warm. He looked too cold. That's not sending the right message when he looks too cold and minus 29 weather. That's where we're at right now. See, when people start reaching on things, that's when I start looking at them funny. And I feel like now we're reaching on Mike McDaniel. And I'm going to tell you this. On May 26th, there might be as much pressure on Tua to win in the playoffs as there is on McDaniel. I mean, think of how they've loaded up. You know, people want to say they've just loaded up for Tua. No, they've loaded up for Mike McDaniel. These are per Mike McDaniel's requests. These people, you saw how involved he got with OBJ. We knew how involved he was in the Tyreek Hill thing. We know how involved he was in Devin Achane. So, yeah, the pressure's on Mike McDaniel. But now we're starting to make little things into big things. Oh, he looked uncomfortable. That's where we're at right now. A man looking uncomfortable in minus 29 degree weather. That's the talking point we're at right now. That's where we're at. I just, when I heard that, I'm like, oh, here we go. That it's not just Tua. They're now waiting on Mike McDaniel. That's the sense I got from watching that. Okay, here we go. Now they're watching Mike McDaniel. It's not just a Tua thing. Why don't you talk about the fact that Mike McDaniel chewed out your former boy, Nick Wright, Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs, chewed him out for not being good enough in that game, to the point where Tyreek Hill talked about it and said Mike McDaniel was right. We don't talk about that. Instead, we talk about how uncomfortable he looks like in minus 29 degree weather. Like it's a day on a Club Med resort on a Caribbean island. Knight says, I still think Achan's turf toe flared up bad in KC. Yeah, he never got right. Phenomenal pod. Hey, Reason, appreciate all your hard work. You were great at what you do. Keep doing it, brother. Thank you. Phenomenal pod. I appreciate you. So, I mean, I just, I don't get it. Now, this is why we continue with this narrative here. Now, what was interesting to me is this is in the Boston Globe, what I'm about to show you right now. This is from Ben Volin, who used to cover the Dolphins, who's a known Tua hater, and he could have thrown Tua under the bus for this, but instead he threw Mike McDaniel under the bus. If you look at his extra points in his article about Sunday football notes, holdouts, and new contracts, the first line of extra notes is about Mike McDaniel. Says the Dolphins have struggled late in the season under coach Mike McDaniel, compiling a 6-10 record after Thanksgiving in his 2 seasons, including 1-4 in January. They'll get their shot at redemption in 2024 with late season games at Green Bay on Thanksgiving, at Cleveland in Week 17, and the Jets in Week 18. Quote, well, if you're wanting to change a narrative, you're going to have an opportunity, McDaniel said last week. Anyone who's followed Ben Volin or whatever was as shocked as I was that this was not pinned on Tua. And what's crazy is earlier in the article, he talked about Tua. And he talked about Tua's contract status. Right? And he even said the Dolphins are in a tricky spot in which they want to continue to build with Tagovailoa, but probably aren't keen on paying him like a top 5 quarterback. The Dolphins may have to suck up and pay Tagovailoa more than they want to. So he talked about Tua and made it seem like they don't want to pay him like a top 5 quarterback. And instead of using Tua Tagovailoa, saying, look at Tua's, because I mean, you can go further back than that. Right? Now, if you start going further back, you're going to find some wins against the Patriots in December and January. But he could have totally thrown that on the back of Tua Tagovailoa. And I find it very interesting that he threw it on the back of Mike McDaniel. And he's not wrong. I'm not sitting here saying he's wrong. I'm sitting here reading between the lines. When a known Tua hater in Ben Volin decides to throw Mike McDaniel under the bus, where he could have done some more research very easily and seen that this December, January thing has been going on since Flores was here. We can go to the Titans game. We can go to the win and get in Buffalo, where the only person who got off the bus that game was Andrew Van Ginkel on both sides of the ball. So I'm sitting here looking at this, and I'm like, man, I'm seeing Mike McDaniel's name pop up a little bit more than regular here. Now, I think Mike McDaniel's fine. I think Stephen Ross loves him. I think, back-to-back playoff appearances. I don't think he's going anywhere. But I'm noticing a trend starting here in the last few weeks. Like, that's in the Boston Globe. That's not even from a local beat writer. First things first. The opportunities there to talk about Tua, they talk about Mike McDaniel. Now, Mike McDaniel hasn't blown a game against Atlanta or Jacksonville the way Brian Flores did, because Brian Flores in his last year of coach here, we actually should have made the playoffs if he would have done his job in either one of those 2 games earlier in the season. He hasn't got to that level yet. But before that season, that final season I started, I said, watch, if things don't go right this year, the fan base is going to turn on Flores, and he's going to be in serious trouble. And sure enough, he was gone. I'm sitting here saying the pressure is on McDaniel now to win. They've given you all your goodies. They've built the roster in your vision. They're in a predicament where they have to pay the quarterback who they brought you in to fix. Now they got to pay him top 5 because you fixed him so well. But we're sitting here without a playoff win. And I'm going to tell you right now, the pressure is on him to perform. And that's why that's how I read between the lines, seeing it starting to trickle out into the media. I mean, Nick Wright's out here blaming him for the most nonsensical thing you can blame a guy for. He didn't look comfortable in the court. Yeah, no shit. Of course, he doesn't look comfortable in the cold. You got to go in minus 29 degree weather, 27 mile per hour winds, and you got to beat arguably the greatest thrower of the football next to Dan Marino that's ever lived in Mahomes, and you got to beat the best coach in football right now. Yeah, that's an uncomfortable situation. 1017 says, O-line has been on our Achilles ever since we've been arguably solved the QB position. With that said, where would you rank our O-line before season start? If they're healthy, they're going to be a top 15, top 10 O-line. But if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all live a wonderful life. The problem is the left side. Like, I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off from Brewer to Connor Williams, if any. I think they're going to be able to do things with Brewer that they weren't able to do with Connor, like pull him and stuff. Now, you know, because you can get by with Driscoll or Eichenberg at right guard if all the other 4 guys are healthy. Richmond talks about it all the time. You know, you can make up for one inadequacy, but when you start having multiple, you know, how many fingers and toes do you have to plug the leaks, right? But if this offensive line stays healthy, this is a top 15, top 10 offensive line. We saw what they were doing. Really what hurt this team is you got to keep that interior clean. Like, I would say Isaiah Wynn staying healthy is just as important as Terron Armstead staying healthy. And I know that's bold, but after what I saw last year in the run game, tell me I'm lying. Raheem Mostert didn't have a 100-yard game after Wynn went down. That's what's crazy. You know, I know every team needs to get into the second half of the season relatively healthy, and health is important for every team. But we cannot stress health enough for this offensive line. And this goes back to what we originally talked about. We know the history of Terron Armstead. We know the history of Isaiah Wynn. History is not in our favor that they are going to stay healthy. And this goes back to what Michelle's question earlier about spending money post June 1st. I wouldn't care about feelings, man. I'd be signing as many top guys left on that market. I'd sign Van Routen and Dalton Reisner. If you really want to know what I'd do right now. And Justin Simmons. All in, push the chips. And I would have veteran guys sitting and waiting to be the next man up, because the chances are high you're going to be relying on the next man up. Like, these are things you should be holding McDaniel's feet to the flame for. Not how comfortable he looks in minus 29 weather. In one of the coldest games in the history of the NFL, which, win or lose, I would have said the same thing, should not have been played. I mean, you had fans who were literally admitted for frostbite because of that game. But the NFL cares more about the almighty dollar than they do the average fan. Let's not start lying to ourselves. Right? All right. Let's keep it rolling here. Let's get into some Tua talk. Because, you know what? We got some interesting things here. And we might have heard something that I didn't want to hear. Now, NFL.com, this is NFL.com, they've labeled our top priority in the offseason as paying Tua. They said the Dolphins have said all the right things about wanting to lock down Tua Tagovailoa long term as the quarterback enters the final year of his rookie contract. Jared Goff's recent 4-year, $212 million extension with the Lions likely sets the parameters around where Tua should land on a new deal. Some outside the building might scoff at paying that much to a quarterback with an injury history who also lacks postseason success, but it's the going rate at the most important position in sports. The usual timeline for new quarterback deals is that they're done leading up to training camp. If Tua, who's missed some of these offseason activities, according to Mike McDaniel, is he given an extension by July, that will speak louder than all the flowery words Chris Greer uses to praise the quarterback. The Finns could take it year by year, electing to play out the fifth-year option in 2024 and tag Tua for the next 2 seasons, but that strategy would come with risks. In the interest of saving a few bucks and cast a pall over the team that expects to compete the AFC East. See, here's the thing. Okay, you want to play at the 5th year. Now what? We've got off the hook the last 2 years of him not winning the MVP when he's been in the MVP conversation in 2022 until he got hurt, and he's in the MVP conversation very late in the season until that Ravens loss. What's the next natural organic step is that he finishes the job and wins the MVP. Now what are we talking about? Y'all are scoffing about 53, 55. Now we're going to be at about 65 million when the cap goes up another 30 million. Okay, you want to pay him, you want to franchise tag him that 45 million hard against the cap. Now what if he gets hurt? You're on the hook for the 45 million. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Now you're on the hook for it. When this new deal is probably looking in that range anyways. Because it's not about the number. Listen, you could go out here and sign a deal worth $55 million a year for 5 years. All right? 220, what is that? $275 million over 5 years. All right? You can go do that right now. But what matters is how much the guaranteed money is. And that guaranteed money is going to be in the 43 to 45 million range. So if you're okay with letting him play out this option, and if he performs well enough, giving him the franchise tag, which is around 45 million hard against the cap anyways, that's the same thing. But you can play with the contract. You can't play with that franchise tag money. So why would you do that? That just doesn't make any sense. If you're okay with paying the franchise tag after next year, then you're okay with giving him $55 million with about $45 million guaranteed right now. Welcome to the Pro Bowl 2C. Appreciate that. And the way this team is, look at how they're spending money. They're spending money like they're going to extend Tua, but they're also spending money with keeping this window open in mind. So, yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Now, here is this is what RG3 had to say, and then we got to get into something here because this is what RG3 said on his podcast. I believe with Steve Wyche. Let me see. I believe it was Steve Wyche. Yeah, it is. So, all right, let's play this clip. Let's talk about it, and then we'll talk about what Wyche and RG3 say after the clip, and then we got to get into something here.
Any developments on Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins?
All I've heard with Tua, and I've heard this for a while, is that they're continuing to work on it. The more they continue to work on it, the more contracts like you might see that Jared Goff just got. Jared Goff just signed that deal. It's averaging, I want to say, about $53 million a year. So the longer you wait, the more these contracts come up. Now, I think with Tua, a deal is going to get done, but it's going to be dependent on the structure.
Okay.
Is he going to get that much guaranteed in the first 2 years? Let's say $73 million. Okay. Is he going to have an out after 2 years in case something doesn't work? Or is it going to be security for a third year? I've heard nothing to make me think that it doesn't get done unless his side is just asking for a structure, or the Dolphins are simply like, we can't do that right now.
Tua has earned his money. It's a little bit of what else can you do? Like, who else is out there that you're going to go grab that's going to be a better player for you than Tua Tagovailoa with the weapons that you have and the chemistry that you have on the team?
See, that's the problem right there. What he says at the end. What's your idea? Like, all these people saying, okay, well, I have the answer. It's not paying Tua. So what's your solution? They have the answer, but no solution. Okay, well, we can wait till next offseason and go get Dak Prescott. Well, your whole issue right now with Tua is that he doesn't win. Why would you go get Dak Prescott, another guy who can't win? And it's in a weaker division. And it's in a weaker conference. And what has Dak done? And Dak's going to get 60+ million. They're not going to go for a rookie. Why are you going to go for a rookie? That resets the whole thing. They're not going for a rookie. That's not the smart long play here. A rookie puts you in a position where you might not even have a winning season. A rookie puts you in a position where you may have to reset everything. And you may have to get rid of people. Because what's the point of keeping Tyreek Hill if you're having to go through a reset? I don't see it happening. I do not see it happening at all. Right? And it makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. And people out here, like, you see the clickbait, right? People out here getting owned by former NFL quarterbacks on their discussions, right? Because they get a reply on Twitter, but then they'll clickbait you and think they actually had a discussion with them, and you're about to sit and watch a thoroughly insightful discussion when all you're seeing are old tweets of someone absolutely destroying the other person. Because these people they have no solutions. They think they have the answers, but they have no solutions. The same people that said Josh Rosen was a franchise quarterback. The same people that told you Skylar Thompson would be QB1 and now he's QB3. The same people that told you Bridgewater and Brissett would beat out Tua. These people have been right 0 times and wrong over a dozen times when it comes to the quarterback position alone. The same people who after the Denver game were coming out here and telling you Tua is a franchise quarterback. Final Finn badge got me feeling like Thanos 2 years deep for Coach AJ. Appreciate you and the support, AJ. Appreciate you, man. So, yeah, Watson to Miami. Imagine these people, they all wanted Deshaun Watson. Imagine if we were stuck in that contract. And these people want to sit here and tell you we shouldn't sign Tua. The same people who said we need to trade for Watson and give him a new deal. And imagine if we were stuck to that deal with how Watson's been in Cleveland. These people can't even get, not only do they not know player evaluations, their financial advice is just as bad. We'd be locked into Deshaun Watson in that contract with all of that money guaranteed. And look at what he's been. Are you serious? But they want to sit up here and they want to try and tell you that they know what they're talking about when it comes to the quarterback position. Please. We can start from Rosen. We can go through Skyler. We can go through Bridgewater. We can go through Brissett. Hell, we can go all the way back to Tannehill. Y'all don't know. No name, nobody says I wanted Watson. I was very wrong. Tua has proven me wrong. Now I want nobody else. Juggernaut says facts reason the Watson deal would have been a disaster for the Dolphins. Bro, do you realize where we'd be right now with Watson's deal? Do you realize, do people absolutely actually realize where we'd be? Do you know where we'd be? They'd be sitting there saying the window's closed, blow it up. You think the window has 1 year or is short now? What do you think it'd be with Watson? We'd be trotting Mike White out there and relying on him to win. Whew. But these are the same people that try and tell you don't pay Tua, but they would have traded for Deshaun Watson and paid him. Go figure that one out. That's how wrong these people are. But they'll keep telling you they're always right. Okay. Now, here's the real thing. Let's get into this. Now, Sports Center this weekend. Jeremy Fowler. Nothing imminent with Tua Tagovailoa contract talks with the Miami Dolphins. There is a quote in here that raised my eyebrows. Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins are trying to come together on a new contract, but there's nothing imminent according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Contract talks didn't progress over the last week, but Tagovailoa still showed up to OTAs. Where it goes from here is anyone's guess. But Fowler reported Tagovailoa is Miami's priority. Let's get into the quote. This is the quote, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So they've been talking, Fowler said Saturday morning on SportsCenter. They've been, especially essentially an offer exchange, but it's not where it needs to be quite yet. Nothing is imminent as far as I've heard. So this could be a path of least resistance situation because the Dolphins wanted to see Tua prove he can be healthy and produce on the field. He did that. So it should shake out this summer. He is a priority. Just hasn't got to the point where it's imminent yet. So they'll hash that out. This is here, right here. Essentially an offer exchange, but it's not where it needs to be quite yet. This is the real question. The real question is right now, are the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa far apart on an extension? That is a real question right now. When I hear essentially an offer was exchanged, but it's not where it needs to be quite yet, it's not like, hey, it's not where it needs to be, but they're close. Now, they didn't use the word far, and I've been saying that's the word you got to look out for when we hear that they're far apart. But that's the first indication we've heard that they are quite a bit apart. Let's use the quite a bit. Not where it needs to be quite yet. I'm telling you, it's coming down to the guaranteed money, and it's coming down to the playtime incentives. This is where we're getting. This is literally where we're getting to. And this is consistent, like when we played the Steve Wyche clip. He was consistent too, right? Basically indicating it's going to get done. Cam Wolfe has indicated it's going to get done. Drew Rosenhaus has indicated it's going to get done. Schefter, when he spoke about it, has indicated it's going to get done. Fowler's indicated it's going to get done. Now, Fowler had already dropped the note that they had exchanged an offer, but he had never said, it's not where it needs to be quite yet. We need details on what's not where it needs to be quite yet. Because the next step after that is saying they're far apart. That's how I view that. That's how I see that. That's the next step. Oh, they're far apart. That's what the next step is. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll continue monitoring it. We got no other choice, but interesting. Interesting. For me, at least. First time I've heard any indication that they're apart on, like, quite a bit apart on money. Another reason why you got to extend them, I'll show you why. Check this out. If I showed you this image, what would you think this would be? If I showed you that image, what do you think it means? If I show you that image, what does it mean? This is a list right now of the most winning seasons in a row for NFL franchises. In a row. Chiefs number 1 with 13, Bills number 2 with 5, and the Dolphins in the same division as the Bills, might I add, third. Them and the Steelers. Now, raise your hand if you know who the quarterback was for those 4 seasons. More leverage for that kid Tua, huh? More leverage for that kid Tua. More leverage. And I mean, shout out to the homie. You know he's the homie at FinHub. Look at this graphic he put out. Right? We've seen the comparisons. Drew Brees and Tua. Now, there's only a 10-game difference. But there's almost 4,000 yards. There's a massive gap in QB rating. There's 25 touchdown difference, so he'd need to throw. Basically, for Drew Brees to tie that over the same amount of games, in his next 10 games, he would need to average 2.5 passing touchdowns a game, and he'd need to average just around 400 yards per game. And we remember listen, I'm not a fan of player comps with rookies coming out, because then everyone automatically expects those players to be that guy. Don't understand that there's a development and a learning curve to get to being that player. But I mean, that was his number 1 comp coming out. And where are we at right now? When you put it in that perspective, quite the stark difference. And remember, and Brees should be this lesson for Tua. Brees started working with Tom House a little later than Tua did. And we saw the jump in Drew Brees' game when he started working with Tom House. We all saw it. I mean, Tom House is one of the reasons he went to New Orleans and won a championship. Just saying. Just saying. Now, keeping it moving here, let's get into this. This is some observations from OTAs as we head into the second. So this is week 1 observations. All right. So it was one of those moments where a defender knows he's in trouble. Devon Achane leaked out of the backfield and was running a route down the sideline as if he were a Miami Dolphins receiver, and veteran safety Jordan Poyer, a newcomer to the team but a gray beard in the NFL, noticed none of Miami's linebackers, picked up the speedy tailback, and began sprinting as fast as he could to prevent a defensive disaster. Fortunately for Poyer, it was too late, because the quarterback had already thrown the football, and Achane brought the catch in for a 20-yard gain, which provided one of the few jaw-dropping highlights of the practice session the media attended earlier this week. Here are the top 10 takeaways, things we learned about the Dolphins from that session. Poyer must prove he hasn't lost a step. The NFL typically begins to toss 30-year-old veterans into the trash bin like they are a carton of expired milk. So a 33-year-old Poyer will spend this season in Miami pushing his expiration date. The accomplished 11-year veteran got beat a couple times during the practice session the media watched, and while one of the players who victimized him is recognized as one of the NFL's fastest playmakers, there's very little doubt that the Poyer's range and one-on-one coverage ability will be tested this season until the former Buffalo Bills starter proves he hasn't lost a step. 2. Dolphins seem one safety short. Even though nickel cornerback Nick Needham is being cross-trained to play safety, there is some concern about Miami's depth and talent level at safety behind Javon Holland and Poyer. The two starters, Elijah Campbell, who is also a cornerback to safety convert, is the only other veteran safety on Miami's training camp roster at the time. The Dolphins also have Patrick McMorris, team's 2024 sixth-round pick, and two undrafted rookies, Jordan Colbert and Mark Perry, playing that position. Don't be surprised if the Dolphins add a veteran safety later this summer or during training camp, because this position is one injury away from becoming a problem area. And that's why when Michelle asked about us spending money, I said I see them spending money on defense because I think they're going to address this. Backup center might be an issue. Sir, it is an issue. Aaron Brewer sat out the OTA period. The media tended to work on the sideline with trainers. That's typically an indicator that he's nursing an injury and the team needs to proceed with caution. At the moment, this isn't too concerning. Miami made it through last year's offseason program without Connor Williams taking a single snap because he was holding out for a new contract. But if Liam Eichenberg is forced to handle a large percentage of Miami's center snaps this season, how will he get a proper evaluation at offensive guard, the spot Eichenberg hopes to start at 2024? If Andrew Meyer and Ireland Brown aren't legitimate options to fill out center, then Miami needs to add a veteran center before training camp arrives. Greg Van Roten. He can play right guard or he can play center. This is what I've been telling all y'all. I mean, we saw they had Jack Driscoll taking snaps at center. Please. Tight end will be one of the more competitive groups. Jerome Smythe, Julian Hill, and Tanner Connor, holdover tight ends from last season, saw Miami add two veterans in Jonnu Smith and Jordy Fortson Jr. during free agency, and extremely lit a fire under the holdovers. All three made impressive catches during the practice session the media watched, and it was as if Smythe, Hill, and Connor were battling to ensure they will continue to have prominent roles in Miami's offense, if not a job. 5. Someone must step up behind Miami's top three receivers. With Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Odell Beckham sitting out Tuesday's practice, the receivers had a relatively quiet session for the quarterbacks Mike White and Skylar Thompson. Hopefully that won't be the case consistently, because quiet camps could cost veterans such as Eric Guzikama, Braxton Berrios, River Craycraft, Anthony Schwartz, and Braylon Sanders their roster spot. Playmakers can't live on potential forever, and none of these five have valid excuse to not be productive because they aren't facing elite cornerbacks daily, and they all should know the offense well. Either start making plays or start packing. Jalen Phillips' noticeable limp is troublesome. The limp Miami's fourth-year pass rusher unintentionally showcased forces everyone who saw it to calm down on the talk that Phillips might be healthy for the start of the regular season. While there's plenty of time between now and December 8th, the Dolphins need to think long-term with Phillips. Miami needs a former University of Miami standout to get himself right, not back as soon as possible, which is why I suspect he might begin training camp on the PUP list. Oh, damn. South Florida's heat and humidity is no joke. This is an important lesson that every rookie and newcomer must receive, and they usually learn it the hard way, like when rookie tailback Jalen Wright supposedly threw up on the field during Tuesday's OTA practice. Heat stroke, dehydration, and sun poisoning are real issues in South Florida, and the newcomers need to educate themselves on how to overcome the elements, because it could become life or death later this month when temperatures potentially rises. 8. The Dolphins need healthy edge rushers. It's a long shot that Phillips and Chubb and Cameron Good are healthy enough to be on the field for the start of the regular season. And this week we learned that Chop Robinson, the Dolphins' 2024 first-round pick, is seemingly nursing an undisclosed injury because he was on the sideline. The Dolphins seem 1-3-4 end or edge rusher light based on who was absent and who was working with their injured rehab assignment. Number 9, Teair Tart's conditioning could be problematic. While Tart might be the most accomplished of all the veteran defensive tackles the Dolphins side this offseason, what we saw during this week's OTAs hint that he's in the worst condition. At the end of Tuesday's practice, the Dolphins defensive lineman did sprints to each sideline, and Tart was generally 20 yards behind the pack. We can excuse his struggles if they were related to an injury, but at this point, let's hope Tart trailing the pack isn't the norm. And number 10, new orange is the new en vogue color. For the past 2 seasons in training camp, Mike McDaniel has awarded orange jerseys to the top performing players in the previous day's practice. The jersey in the playlist the player gains control of for a day. This is a way of rewarding players who personify what the team's looking for and hopes to build on the franchise. This can't, it seems, after if the orange outfits have begun to incorporate the coaching staff. When David Long Jr. was the orange jersey player on Monday, the entire linebacking coaching staff wore orange gear. When Kader Kohou was the top performer on Tuesday, everyone in the secondary was in orange attire. So there you go. The coaching staff is adapting to now they are wearing orange, not just the player. So if an offensive lineman wins it, then all the offensive line coaches will wear orange stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't know. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. And, I agree. TR Tart, we are expecting big things from you. Your conditioning better get better, sir. Better get better. And healthy edge rushers definitely are going to be needed. Now, I agree. Someone's going to need to step up. That receiver battle, I know Omar talked about the tight end position being competitive, but that receiver battle is going to be next level. I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, Braxton Berrios could, he could be in serious jeopardy here. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. Braxton Berrios can be in serious jeopardy here of losing play. I think Malik Washington is going to blow these guys up. If you want my honest opinion, I'm betting my money on Malik Washington being the strongest after the top 3. That's where I'm putting my money, is on Malik Washington. I've said that since we drafted him. I will continue to say that. Malik Washington, even when we got OBJ, it didn't faze me. I still think he has a big year for a rookie. Like, Eric Ezukanma, man. This coaching staff has huge expectations for you. Obviously, because you've stuck around with talk about ups and downs this kid has gone through since he's been here. Holy jeez. Right? You just can't catch a break. You're going to have to catch that break. You're going to have to catch that break. Like, we know. See, because a guy like River Craycraft even threatens Ezukanma because we know how much, A, the coaching staff likes him, but B, the coaching staff trusts him. I really think it's going to come down, for me at least, it's going to come down to that. How many do you carry? And who emerges at 5, 6, and 7? Because Malik Washington might start off as 5, 6, or 7, but I'm telling you, he'd be wide receiver 4 by the end of this. And Jason Stans makes a great point. Easy is that only big body type we have. Agreed. But what good is it if it can't get off the sideline? It is what it is, man. Berrios, Ezukanma, Craycraft, they're going to have to step up. And Taj Washington you could throw in there too, right? But, I mean, are we really expecting Anthony Schwartz or Braylon Sanders to do anything? Let's be honest with ourselves. I know I'm not. Please. And, depth is going to be a real thing, especially on that offensive line, because it's going to be tested. History tells us it's going to be tested. So, it is what it is. Man, over 320 of you in the room. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Appreciate all you coming through on this Sunday. I would take Polly King says, my wife cousin is Tyrus Bauer, and his knee injury was just an infection that happened from a knee cleanup he had done before. The Ravens overlooked it and let him go. listen, if Bowser could play right now, sign me up. Sign me up. Okay? Because you're talking about, I mean, when he's healthy, you're talking about a good player right there. So, I mean, and, you know, but again, here's the thing, bro. Here's where we're at. Defense again. We need offense depth. Now, I would take them just because we don't know when Chubb and Phillips are going to be good to go. We have no idea whatsoever. You know what I mean? And listen, you're talking about a guy who he's put up numbers and he's done things. So I would be totally down for Bowser. Totally down. Guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Over 325 in the room. Appreciate you guys for coming through. Smash that like button. And I will see y'all this week. So I'll be back this week. Enjoy your Sunday. And you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. And as usual, I will see y'all on the next one. Take it easy, everyone.